Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about something that's extremely important. We're talking about climate damage. We've also recently seen the conference on climate damage and the impact of climate damage on society. We'll be talking about what efforts have been made recently with regard to this as far as increasing knowledge on it, increasing awareness on it as far as society is concerned, making sure that all level of society can be educated on what an extremely important climate damage, its impact is, and how do we move towards changing things for us, what efforts can be made in that regard on a government level, on individual level, also of course internationally, the kind of help that countries like Pakistan that remain of course are underdeveloped and don't have the kind of resources needed to combat this kind of climate damage. I have with me Ali Jabbir, who's a senior journalist, Munawar Mahar, who's an expert on sustainable development, coal and human security, Munir Ahmed, who's a geopolitical analyst, climate change policy, advocacy expert. Thank you for being with us today. Let me start off with Munawar Mahar here. Munawar Sahab, there is generally of course no, we know the causes, we know the issues largely with regard to climate damage, and yet we also know that those responsible for a huge chunk of carbon emissions, that kind of damage to climate coming from those sources remain largely, they're responsible, but yet they haven't been able to do much with regard to countries like Pakistan. To what do you attribute this? Of course, it's the injustice of it is just one part of it. The other part is the suffering of the people overall, and of course the fact that it will continue to increase, no?
Thank you, Mahrukh, for having me in your show. It's very important topic that you have raised. First of all, we need to put this issue of environmental crisis, climate change in a proper perspective. Actually, climate change is the greatest threat to the humanity's biological survival, existence, and the habitability of this planet Earth. It is a threat and also a threat multiplier. It creates new issues, social, political, and it worsens the existing challenges and problems. Now, as far as your question is concerned, it is a great debate in the divide between global north and global south. Global north is industrialized, advanced economies, and they are mainly responsible historically and currently responsible for this green emission of greenhouse gases and especially CO2. Now, the debate is that China and the global south, led by China, India, Brazil and other countries, they are of the view that the historical responsibility of this climate crisis lies with the Western countries, because it was there where industrial revolution started in 18th century, and they have benefited the most from this economic development of this fossil capitalism and this fossil energy. So it is, they should take the lead. On the other hand, the global north, they say forget about the past. Let's look ahead and let's come up with the collective response to this environmental
collective response.
Crisis.
Let's talk about that. Munir, we talk about collective response, but the question is that kind of collective response possible when there is such a huge amount of disparity between different countries like Pakistan also, and of course we know the countries like the West, again like Munawar Sahab also said, the global south and the global north. Do you think it's possible for that kind of collective action in your opinion?
Collective action certainly not that possible in the perspective as you mentioned, because of the disparity. But as a nation, we can respond to it. And certainly, like we will be going to COP29 very soon, it means like 29 years have been passed, and still the Conference of Parties cannot come to the concrete conclusions. They have, for example, the Paris Agreement clearly define the responsibilities and the contributions of the developed nations. But they, despite they promised some funds, but they did
haven't
not
come.
contributed. This is the situation. And secondly, the vulnerability increasing day by day. And even the loss and damage fund, what the nations, the developed nations agreed to, they could not materialize the funds. On the other hand, they cannot even place representatives from developing countries on the board of loss and damage fund. So these are the lacunas that really mask the progress on these issues. So in such a situation, what we can do? I always talk about the individual responsibilities. We need to combat at least the vulnerabilities at the local level, where the responsibility comes to individuals and the basic, the ground level governance system. So we have to urge, for example, if I'm suffering from any disease, certainly I will be crying for help. Now the people needs to start crying, and instead of protesting for other issues, they shall start protesting for the basic shelter or basic measures to be taken at the grassroots level for the protection of their life and their livelihood. That is the basic thing. And perhaps the grassroots level pressure will improve the local governance system, and of course, if that improves, then I think I basically believe change comes from the grassroots level, and it shall go up. Secondly, the most important thing is we have so many policies. We have international cooperation section in the Foreign Office, as well as in the Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination. Both section has to play very pertinent role in mobilizing such funds and resources. And still I believe the bureaucracy is not performing that much, and the agenda and the priorities of the ruling people is,
I think the priorities generally also, I'm going to include Ali in this also. Ali, there is, generally speaking, as far as priorities are concerned, as a nation, as we suffer from a host of other issues, and somehow, although we have seen the recent government take this up on a much higher level, there seems to be, this issue seems to take a back seat. What are the reasons for it, in your opinion?
Bismillah. First of all, I would like to mention that climate change as a problem needs to have a cogent and clear understanding among the stakeholders. First of all, you have to realize that either it is your problem or not. And if it is your problem, what actually its nature is. First of all, climate, yes, it is a local problem. It is not an international problem. We are facing climate catastrophes every day, every month, every year. By the time one crisis ends, the second is ready to hit us. Either these are heat waves, floods. Just imagine, this is the second consecutive year we don't have spring season. We directly transitions from winter to summer.
Yes.
This is very strange. The cherry crop in the northern areas would have faced a devastating impact of this heat wave. Then our mango crops. Now, when we look at our policy makers, this time this was very unprecedented that many political parties mentioned climate action as an important part of their manifesto, but that was just merely you can say limited to lip service. Actually, the thing is action and governance. When you address climate change, the two important components that you have to address is, first is the policy, second is the institution, and the auxiliary part is the governance matter. When you have an institution, you have to manage the governance. Now, if we talk about at the public level, this is not at the back burner. People are aware. You see on social media there is outcry on forest fire recently that held in Margalas, even on heat waves, and then you also see messages on WhatsApp circulating that people are trying to educate each other on heat wave impacts. Either the government
But isn't there a very small, Munawar Sahib, isn't that, following on from what Ali is saying, isn't this a very small chunk of the population? I mean, there's a huge number of, people who really have no idea about climate damage. They have no idea of the fact that, you know, even the floods and the fact that they are suffering is because of the change that's happening, because of the carbon emissions, because of a host of other issues, and because, of course, of a lack of education. Also, they remain clueless.
Actually, what to talk of a commoner on the street. If you do a content analysis of the debate in parliament and the discourse in media, you will not find any mention of climate change in this environmental crisis.
Okay.
In the context of Pakistan or in the global context. So this thing, it reflects that we are not giving that importance to this issue. You know, the issue is grave. I'm going to give you the facts that you can gauge the gravity and the scale of this issue. Since the 1880, the global average temperature has risen by 1.5 Celsius,
Right.
growing at the rate of 0.15 Celsius per decade. Per decade since the industrial revolution, revolution. Before the industrial revolution, the amount of carbon dioxide in atmosphere, it was 200 ppm, parts per million.
Right.
Now it has grown, it has rather crossed over the 400 ppm. Now this amount of CO2 has been pumped by humans through their emissions into atmosphere in just less than the 300 years. What nature put in the atmosphere in the millions of years, over the millions of years. Now that climate change, that rising temperature is causing this global warming, and that global warming is causing this climate to change, and these heat waves, they are the consequences, they are the effect of that climate change that are killing the people in Pakistan and India, because Asia is the most impacted by these recent heat waves. Few days back, Mohenjo-daro, a small town in Sindh, Larkana, Sindh, known for its location of Indus Valley civilization, Mohenjo-daro, 52 centigrade was recorded.
Yes.
52 centigrade. The last time it was highest centigrade temperature was recorded in Turbat, 54. Now in Turbat 2017, that 54 is the second highest in Asia and the fourth highest in the world. Now this is the situation, but when you look at the national policies and priorities, you won't find the any debate or any discourse or any policies on these issues.
Munir sahab, national discourse, national priorities, is it really just, can we lay the blame at the door of any government really, or is it, you know, because of course they're confronted with a host of other issues. It's not just climate damage. Right now, if you look at the priority, where does climate damage, where can, in your opinion, climate damage come?
The governments can give you policies
Yes.
and try to cope up with some mechanisms. Some of the mechanisms are in place,
Okay.
and some are being taken into consideration. After the 18th Amendment, all the environment goes to the sub-national systems. Now the provinces has to take care of all these things.
Right.
Federal government can give you an umbrella policy, but all the implementation has to be taken by the provinces. Unfortunately, the provinces have not been able to cope up with these things.
Okay.
And they could not reach to communities. We have spotted the entire hotspots, but we are unable to make communities understand that what pre-disaster measures they need to take. Okay. One thing. Secondly, provinces have I don't know, they have funds. They are doing several agreements with concerned donors as well, but despite those efforts, it could not come to that hyped agenda for the governments.
Okay.
Second, and most important is the communities and every individual should take care of its surroundings and take measures that are given by the authorities or spotted. For example, the same are the reasons for floods, and the same way floods are damaging communities, people since 2010. And if repeatedly we face floods and we get the same type of losses or increasing losses, the communities go back to the same hotspots. They cannot take, or even the governments, the subnationals can not take the measures to create shelters or like to create communities aware of the issues, and they cannot induct kind of information, or they cannot educate people.
When we talk about this, we also, recently we've had the Supreme Court's conference on climate governance. Ali, we saw, there was a huge emphasis on environment friendly measures also. We saw Chief Justice also, we saw, other justices like Mansoor Ali Shah, even Justice Aisha Malik take a lead in, this endeavor particularly. Of course, this is a huge initiative, it's a huge step. And to have, a Supreme Court actively involved in this, it means a lot. But how do we channelize this in terms of bringing it to every level, every strata of society, which is really the challenge here?
Thank you so much for mentioning that aspect as well. The most convincing thing at that conference was that the level of education and climate literacy among the judiciary was unprecedented.
Okay.
The presentations delivered by Justice Aisha Malik, Justice Mansoor Ali Shah, Mr. Adil Najam, then Chief Justice of Pakistan, they are now asking their judges to align their knowledge with climate related science and data. They are pushing the magistrates, the district level courts to develop their capacities to address cases or suits related to climate change. Now, when you say that how to channelize this, it is all about ownership and leadership. Like judiciary, they gave the leadership to their all stratas of judicial system that we have to take climate change seriously. Now, the next part is that every single element of that system, that chain, has to own this responsibility. The judiciary, the community, civil society, academia, government. We can't alone blame the government to do all the job. They can't do it.
And how does that, I think that what you're saying is extremely important. I think it hits the nail on the head. How do we, sort of involve the community? Of course, media is one way, and I think media also has actively taken this up, but perhaps, it can be done in a more proactive manner. And how do we, again, involve basic, private individuals, communities, companies also have taken a lead in this. Yes. They've also started, inculcating environment friendly measures, which is also a huge part of what we give back to the environment.
Youth and women green entrepreneurship is the solution.
Okay.
When you give voice to the youth, when you give voice to the women, and you give them an opportunity to excel in green entrepreneurship, to adopt such businesses, either they are small scale or large scale, that are environment friendly, like plastic recycling, like producing reused material, like using innovative solutions to address resource recollection. Women are taking lead in that. In Lahore, we have very good models of plastic waste recycling where women entrepreneurs are coming up. In 10 billion tree tsunami, you got women entrepreneurship where women were raising saplings to earn money. This was green movement of generating livelihood and opportunities. This is the solution. Now private sector companies and the corporate sector, under their social sector responsibility, can also lead by promoting such solutions, by financing such ideas where youth and women are getting voice for their innovative startups that address climate change. And interestingly, our science universities are leading very good startups. Our youth has very creative and innovative ideas, but they need some support and financing. The government can do the policy.
Again, financing again is a huge issue, and we have, globally, have we had the kind of help that we would like, Munawar Sahab? Globally, I mean, from, of course, international donors. Do you think, we've been able to engage them enough? Do you think we've been able to get them to invest enough in the private sector on these issues, for example?
Actually, As far as this global financing, you call it green financing is concerned, the rich countries, advanced countries, global north, they are reluctant to provide that kind of amount or money that we need to for the adaptation and mitigation effort. They are of the view that, look, you should develop your own resources. You should develop your own policies. Whatever we give you, it falls prey to the corruption and irregularities and misappropriation. We are not responsible for footing your bill. So develop your own resources. Now, due to this war in Ukraine and other issues in the West, they are also suffering from the aid exhaustion. There's sort of aid fatigue. So the amount of aid, green aid or green financing, is not forthcoming that we are looking towards the West. You were talking of the response. Actually, we need response at the individual level, we need response at the national level, at the provincial level, at the international level.
No, but you're saying that internationally, they're not as receptive as we would like.
They are not receptive, but they need to be receptive, because this global...
So how do we engage them then?
This climate change issue is a global issue.
Right.
This climate change is affecting, is damaging, destroying the livability and habitability of the entire planet. America is also on this planet. They need to realize the better, the sooner the better. Actually, why they are not realizing and coming to realize that this is a common threat to all the humanity, because as a humanity, we are divided by creed, caste, color, national interest. China thinks that if we cut down our carbon emissions, American GDP will grow and we will fall behind. America thinks that if we cut down our carbon emissions, we will have to face the political cost and the political backlash, because it is going to impact the jobs and their industry and their economic growth. So these are the geopolitical consideration in national interest that is not allowing them to come together and do something to respond to the climate change. By the time they realize, we need to take a few steps, like at the national level.
What steps do you think?
At the national level, policy makers, they need to green their politics. Okay. By greening their politics, they need to include climate and environmental crisis in their manifestos. They need to have a more debate and discussion in the parliament on the climate change and the related issues.
I think it's a welcome change. One has to at least talk about this, that this was part more, we've seen it become more a part of manifestos this time during the elections. That happened this year than perhaps earlier.
But there's a need to implement those manifestos. They need to come up with the climate governance. At the individual level, we need to, at the individual and also national level, we need to green our education. How you are going to protect your communities? By educating them. We need to give green literacy, environmental literacy, climate literacy to our young rising generation.
That's another thing. Is it enough? Is it part of...
Yes, it's going to play a huge role, because those Pakistan is 62% is population is composed of the youth. This youth is going to take over the country in future. Women and the youth, they are one of the most vulnerable sections of the society in Pakistan. So we need to target the most vulnerable sections of the society and protect them from the effects of
Are they also, in your opinion, Munir Sahib, is it enough? Is it part of our curriculum to a degree that where it should be? Are we teaching, little children? I think now there is a recognition of it. It's also inclusive. But is it enough, in your opinion, for, it to become a huge part of your everyday life, for it to become a huge part of the initiatives that are taken on a national level as a country also?
It's a very pertinent question, that how to engage our youth, and if we really need to burden them with more books. There are two ways of educating. Like you put everything in the curriculum and increase the burden of the books, one thing. The second is you engage your youth, your children, on ground implementation of like environment friendly initiatives. I think the second is more engaging, and this was done in many countries. I'm a witness to the Chinese models as well since 1990s. And what they did, they engaged all their youth, women and farmers, those they could be the vulnerable communities. They engaged into on-ground implementation of or like environmental improvement, and that has given much more impact or change at ground. So a couple of times I have pointed out, and I have given this idea to the Higher Education Commission as well, that engage your university students in their summer, and they should bring change or try to take initiatives to improve their local environments, and that is very important. And afterwards they should be given some marks on that. That's how the practical work can be part of the formal education. So I believe such kind of things. And the other thing that the priorities that we need to, as Jabbir said, I think we need to focus on two major sectors. One is the forest. The communities and the people shall be, taking responsibility of raising voices for deforestation, because we are cutting, huge number of trees every day.
Yes.
Whenever there is a scam, it's 2,000 trees were cut, and the timber has been
so where is
exported to the urbans.
So then where is you're saying on the one hand that there is a recognition of it, there is a consciousness, then where is that consciousness? If we are still
consciousness is the mafias don't have consciousness. They only believe in the money that comes in.
But that control
the communities has to be empowered, and the forest guards have to be empowered. And those forest guards and those communities who are living around the forest areas, they shall be educated, and especially the youth shall be engaged into such kind of protection initiatives. And another thing that I believe, that as we had environmental tribunals, now we should also have forest magistrates.
Okay.
They should try all the criminals in in rapid justice process. There should be some mechanism, if they get some complaints against some, and they should be given verdict against them, and if we could be able to punish a few people. And the third most important thing again is reforestation. That is very important. And also the fourth thing is we need to take care of the water bodies that we have, water reservoirs, and try to increase water bodies and to harness the potential of rainwater through ponds, artificial lakes and check dams. That is very important. And these two things, if we could do, if we could engage our farmers, youth, it means we are engaging 80 to 90% of our people into conservation of forests, restoration of forests, conservation of water.
Alternative ways, for example, I'm going to include Ali in this also, but even for farmers, where of course we are, because of climate damage, we've also seen a shortage of water, and that is the next step for agriculturists and farmers and overall, and going towards perhaps other sources, other ways of farming. For example, at one time, now of course this is an old concept, drip irrigation was talked about, so we need to move towards that for sustainability of our crops also. Do you think we're taking effective measures towards that, Ali?
Interestingly, I would like to again quote an example from that yesterday conference of Supreme Court. Dr. Iqrar Saab, the Vice Chancellor of Faisalabad University, was there. He told us that we have existing technology developed in R&I sections of our university that needs to be implemented, and it is sufficient to meet our climate resilience goals. The interesting part, he told us that there is, due to lack of knowledge among the farmers and more focus on conventional practices, there is a resistance to modern technologies like drip irrigation, use of we can say the biological fertilizers that are not chemical one, the green fertilizers. So, but the recently Punjab government has started an initiative to create model farms. Those model farms will be a sort of an example for local farmers, the small scale farmers, to learn and adapt to the modern practices, and to learn that crop yield is far more better while using these more advanced technologies and techniques as compared to their conventional practices, and it is also more good for the soil health as well.
And you think it's going to go to, for example, if we talk about areas in interior Sindh or South Punjab and all those areas also, we are going to be educating farmers there also and telling them about this?
But one thing is important, when we talk about farmers, one, they have their own indigenous knowledge, the local knowledge that they carry. The second is their experience based knowledge. They are far more educated in terms of the impacts of climate than us. We people doing research or doing studies inside our own silos will have a limited knowledge.
They can usually predict,
yes,
you know, a lot
yes,
of weather patterns suited to crops and all. And of course, it's about experience.
If you allow me to add,
please go ahead.
We have National Agriculture Research Center. They have developed agricultural science, seeds, and they have also experimented in their own fields. So I believe, and on the other hand, we have provincial extension departments as well, and they also have like many good practices inside. The issue is with the efficiency of those and the research dissemination to the farmers. NARC is only responsible to develop researches, and they should be transferred to the farmers, and that is the responsibility of the provinces. I believe if that research, now federal government has also signed an agreement with the Korean government, and their scientists will be coming to develop more climate resilient
this exchange of information is extremely important.
So I believe like such kind of initiatives, if they reach to the farmers in real time with all the efficiency, it would create the more food security.
Munawar Sahib,
Mahrukh, as we are discussing the solutions, I would like to add a very important point here. We need to move to the sustainable development, because this current existing economic model, global economic model driven by capitalism, fossil energy, consumerism, this ruthless exploitation of natural resources, it has destroyed the habitability of this planet and threatened our survival. So in this regard, we have got a very good and effective plan of action under the banner of sustainable development goals. Pakistan needs to implement achieve the targets of those goals. Those goals address every aspect of progress, planage and economic development, right from the poverty alleviation goal number 1 and the goal number 13, it deals with the climate change. So if we implement those goals, those are going to cover all the aspects of society, economy and our environment and ecology. So we need to achieve those goals by 2013.
And do you think we are closer to achieving them than perhaps 5 years ago, Munir Sahib?
I reviewed our SDGs performance a couple of years back, and at that time, unfortunately, the research and those experts coming from different parts of the country, they believed that we could not achieve the required targets in the initial years, and still I think we are lagging behind. We are not very proactively working on it. One thing. The second thing is, whatever meager work has been done, it is not reflected in the dashboard. Dashboard is not very proactive. So the work being done under the CSR, even that is not reflected in SDGs dashboard. So there are multiple issues with us. The most important is to integrate whatever the success that we have achieved, and thirdly, we need to increase again the efficiency of our systems. That is very important. And thirdly, capacity of the organizations is very important. And unfortunately, whatever the resources we have, they are not used very efficiently. The progress on couple of SDGs, they are wonderful. For example, SDG 13, climate action. Even the poverty alleviation SDG is not very much, it's not very impressive. despite like there are a few organizations, they have spent so much money into it, and banks are also creating windows for small fundings or microfinance and medium sort of initiatives. But still we need to educate people. Giving loan is something, but making your loan perform the required achievement, that is that lacks in most of the cases. Some are wonderful examples, but we need to create more best examples in to have the more benefits of
I want to
the
talk
green
particularly,
financing.
we're running out of time, but I want to talk about something very important, the link of this to human rights. And I think this was also brought up during the conference when you talk about the fact that, climate change does exacerbate, it increases human rights issues. And we've seen that happen. It increases the frequency, intensity of disasters, it worsens air quality and the spread of infections that invariably happen from that. That's an aspect of climate change, and it marginalizes those more, I guess, from the haves, from the have-nots. And that is an aspect that perhaps also really needs to be highlighted. Of course, our healthcare professionals also need to really highlight this, but overall in society. And it's a very real aspect of climate damage. Ali?
Yes, and the best thing that the statement that Justice Mansoor Ali Shah gave was that nature's dignity is human's dignity.
Right.
When you protect nature's dignity, you protect human's dignity and you ensure human rights. And when you have to link climate change with human rights, then you say it's all the nature's rights are the human's rights.
Right.
So when we have to, the 2022 floods are the clear and the best manifestation of how human rights have eroded in our society, the way our communities have been impacted, and the way the relief was disrupted because of the massive destruction. For many months, many of the population in the far-flung areas of Balochistan remained inaccessible to relief efforts just because of the stagnant water. The women there, they died because of malnutrition. Many children
and
died.
And the spread of disease that
Yes.
we saw happen there.
Shari Rahman made a statement that she was distributing mosquito nets. A family, they only were left with one cow. The girl, she took that mosquito net and she wrapped around her cow. She said, it's for your family. She said, no, we want to protect our animal. It's the only asset we have left with. This was the scale of devastation. And in this scenario, when you talk about protecting human rights, it is better to
this is the level of poverty, and this
Yes.
is the level of marginalization, this is the level of disparity that we are dealing with in society. I think, it's hair-raising, and it is something that really, really is, at least should make us all think what and how can we do whatever we can to make things easier for those that suffer the most, even at the behest of climate damage. Ji, Munawar Sahib.
Since you have brought up this point of human rights, human rights, right to life, honor, property, dignity, food, clean water, clean air, these are the fundamental rights, and they are one of the first casualty of any climate-induced natural disaster like flooding, climate-induced flooding. It leads to the loss of dignity. In case of women, lots of privacy, livelihood, and whatever belongings you have got. During the 2022 flooding, there were more than 500,000 pregnant women in Sindh, and especially in Sindh across
the statistics are actually hair-raising, unfortunately.
Hair-raising. So they suffer the most. Children suffer the most.
Right.
Due to loss of privacy and the violence, domestic violence, it surges after the.
It leads to a host of other issues, and crimes, of course, in the increase in crimes. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for joining us today. Munir Ahmed Saab, thank you for your time. Munawar Mahar Saab, thank you for joining us. Ali Jabbir, thank you for your very valuable time. Overall, of course, as far as the issue of climate damage is concerned, it's certainly a huge issue for Pakistan, and not just Pakistan, all over the world. We've recently seen, of course, the damage at an insurmountable level when we look at the floods that happened recently, and that leading to a host of other issues, a host of other crimes. Let's hope that as a society we can prioritize this. Of course, we recently saw the conference on climate damage, and of course the overall justice is also taking a huge interest in this, and of course pointing out what this means, the effort of the government also. We've seen overall an increase in a proactive proactive work towards climate damage. Of course, climate reparation also is a huge area, and we hope that countries that can do more will do more for those that unfortunately, like Pakistan, have a limited amount of resources. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.